In the heart of Africa, Nigeria, rich in culture, history, and resources, stands at a crossroads. The winds of change blow strongly, but are they bringing growth or sowing the seeds of a future built on foreign control? As the pulse of the nation quickens, one question remains. Can Nigeria hold on to its sovereignty in a world that demands more? In the heart of Abuja, Nigeria's capital, the world converged. Today, the city hosted a powerful summit where nations and corporations gathered to discuss partnership, trade, and global cooperation. The air was thick with expectation. Nigeria, the giant of Africa, had become a key player on the world stage. Among the crowd sat a man whose reputation was known throughout the nation, Chidi, a passionate and outspoken opposition leader. To him, this summit represented something much more than just economic cooperation. It was a moment of reckoning for Nigeria's sovereignty, a question of whether the nation would stand firm on its own or bow to foreign influence. Chidi had long warned of the subtle, creeping foreign influence in Nigerian politics. He knew this speech, this very moment, could change the future of his country. Would they, the leaders of Nigeria, accept the promises of the foreign powers, or would they defend the rights of their people?
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed leaders of the African continent, and distinguished guests, it is an honor to stand before you today at this historic summit. We gather here not as competitors, but as partners with a shared vision for the future. Nigeria stands at the crossroads of progress. With its rich resources, dynamic youth, and strategic location, but this great nation has the potential to lead Africa into a new era. But, as we all know, no nation thrives in isolation. True greatness is achieved through cooperation and when focus auctioned through partnerships with the global community. That is why today we are here not only to discuss opportunities, but to offer our support. Our corporations are ready to invest in Nigeria's future, to offer expertise, technology, and resources that will help Nigeria fulfill its potential. Together, we can build a future where Nigeria is not just an economic power, but a leader in the global stage. For that future to be realized, Nigeria must open its doors, allow foreign investment, and embrace the global order. The world has changed, and so must we. We are here to offer a hand of friendship, but we also ask for mutual respect, transparency, and a shared vision for progress.
Chidi had seen this before. It was always the same rhetoric. Foreign powers presenting themselves as benevolent benefactors, offering aid and prosperity, but always with strings attached. He had spent his life fighting for Nigeria's independence, for its right to decide its own future. Now he faced a choice. Was he ready to stand up in front of the world and defend his people from this foreign influence?
We understand the importance of preserving cultural heritage and sovereignty. However, we must also acknowledge that in today's interconnected world, no country can afford to stand alone. If Nigeria wishes to continue, it must integrate into the global system, into a world where resources, information, and power are shared across borders. With all due respect, Ambassador, this is not about cooperation. This is about control. Nigeria has fought independence for decades, and now we are being asked to give it up in exchange for promises we've heard before. We will not allow our sovereignty to be sold for gold. We're not going to allow our sovereignty to be sold for gold. Thank you for your input, Chidi. Let's address that point with the facts at hand. The concerns of sovereignty. It's a noble idea, Chidi. But I ask you, what is sovereignty without the tools to defend it? What is sovereignty without the resources to compete on the global stage? What is sovereignty if it means bowing to foreign masters? Nigeria is rich in resources. Nigeria is rich in resources, talent, and culture. We do not need to be shackled by foreign interests. Our sovereignty is not for sale.
The battle lines were drawn. In one corner stood those who believed that Nigeria's future lay in global cooperation, and in the other stood the defenders of the nation's independence. But this wasn't just a political debate. It was the beginning of a new war, a war fought in silence, through whispers and gestures, through the sway of public opinion, through the power of social media and digital activism. As the debate rages on, Nigeria's fate hangs in the balance. The stage is set for a fight not just for policy, but for the very soul of the nation. Will Nigeria stand firm, or will it bow to the forces that seek to control its destiny? As the applause rings out, Chidi knows this is just the beginning. He looks to Seyi, whose eyes are now filled with determination. They know what comes next, a fight for the heart of Nigeria, a battle for its soul.
My brothers and sisters, today is the day that we make our stand. Today is the day we show the world that Nigeria cannot and will not be bought. Not some small nation that can be dictated to by foreign powers. Our sovereignty is not for sale. Our land, our future, our future, our land, our land, our land, our future. These people, we are the heart of Nigeria. Have a rich history, a powerful culture, and an economy that could thrive on its own. We do not need foreign governments telling us how to live, how to trade, or how to govern.
The voice of the people was no longer contained within the walls of the rally. It spread, amplified by the power of digital activism. As the protests swelled, so did the online movement. Seyi, a young woman with the touch of a digital revolution, knew that social media would be the catalyst for the next phase of the movement. The hashtag Nigeria for Nigerians was gaining momentum, and the world was beginning to take notice.
Here we are in the heart of Abuja, and what do we see? What do we see? The people are speaking, youth are rising, and they're demanding one thing: freedom. Freedom from foreign influence. Freedom from foreign manipulation. These foreign powers, with their aids and partnerships, want nothing more than control. It's a new kind of colonialism. They disguise their intentions as benevolent acts, but make no mistake, it's a power grab. But this is not just about foreign influence. This is about Nigeria standing on its own 2 feet.
The digital floodgates had opened. Seyi and Tolu were just 2 of many online warriors pushing the agenda for a sovereign Nigeria. But the government was not blind to the uprising. It was only a matter of time before the battle would shift from the streets and social media to the political sphere. In the space between the streets and social media, Nigeria was at war, not with weapons, but with words. The battle for sovereignty was taking shape, and both sides were preparing for a showdown. The government could no longer ignore the people, nor could they continue to ignore the influence of foreign powers. The time for negotiation was running out.
The situation is spiraling out of control. The protests have grown too large, and it's not just in the streets anymore. We need to find a way to regain control of the narrative. We cannot afford to lose control. The international community is watching closely. Our foreign partners are worried. They're expecting a resolution, and they need to see that Nigeria remains stable and committed to our existing agreements.
Yes, Mr. President, but the protests are no longer just an inconvenience. They are a serious threat to our position.
We risk losing both the people and the foreign powers if we don't act quickly.
We cannot afford to alienate the international community. The foreign powers have been a part of our strategy for economic growth.
But if we give in too much to the people's demands, we will lose everything.
Sir, the protests, they're becoming too large. We can't ignore this longer. I know. We need to act, and quickly. What if we offer some concessions, Mr. President? Secure this longer. Some reforms to address the people's concerns while still maintaining our alliances with foreign powers? We can't ignore this longer. We could show the people that we are listening to them without threatening our agreement.
Yes, a controlled response. We can promise the people that we will consider their demands. Perhaps some restructuring of foreign aid agreements or trade deals, but still hold firm on the bigger picture. It's about showing that we are responding to the public, but in a way that doesn't jeopardize our position in the global order.
You're suggesting we throw a few bones to the people, but keep the bigger deal intact?
Exactly, Mr. President. We can give them the illusion of victory while keeping our international relationships strong.
The key is to make sure they feel heard while still maintaining control of the bigger picture.
The balance between foreign influence and national sovereignty had always been delicate. The government now found itself caught between the aspirations of its people and the pressures of international powers that held the purse strings to Nigeria's economic future. The choice was clear: give the people something to appease them, or risk losing the support of both the people and the world. In the streets, the voice of the people was growing louder, and no matter how much the government tried to control the narrative, the truth remained. The people were no longer passive observers. They were active participants in the shaping of their nation's future. And no amount of diplomacy or political maneuvering could quiet their voices.
We need to keep the pressure on. The people need to know. Ogo, we're not backing down. If the government won't listen, we'll make them listen.
As the protests raged on the streets, Seyi and her fellow activists knew the stakes were high. They were not just fighting for the future of Nigeria, they were fighting for the right to be heard in a world where foreign powers often dictated the rules. With every tweet, every post, every live stream, they fueled the fire of a revolution that could change the course of history.
This is unacceptable. We need solutions now. If we give them what they want, we risk losing the support of the foreign powers. If we don't, the people will tear this government apart. We can't afford to fail, not now.
We may have to consider a public speech, Mr. President. We need to reassure both the people and international partners. A well-crafted statement could diffuse the situation, at least for now.
We need to be careful with how we frame this. We can't make it seem like we're backing down completely. We need to promise reforms.
We promise reforms without undermining the government's authority.
I'll give the speech tomorrow. We'll promise the people some changes. But we will also remind them that our international relationships are non-negotiable. They will understand.
The government's plan was set in motion, a carefully worded speech that would try to walk the tightrope between appeasing the masses and retaining the country's foreign relationships. But Chidi, Seyi, and their supporters knew better. The people's voice had been heard, and no amount of political maneuvering could stop the tide that was rising in Nigeria.
If we don't act fast, we risk alienating both the international community and the citizens who are on the streets. We can't afford to appear weak, Adamu. If we back down now, it will signal to the foreign powers that we are unstable. We must show them that Nigeria is still strong and committed to the global order. We must reassure the world that Nigeria remains open for business while simultaneously addressing those concerns. A delicate balance, but one we can achieve with the right messaging. What if the people don't want our reassurances? Minister, what if they demand more than words? We could promise them some reforms, but the truth is, the international community's influence over our economy is too strong. If we isolate ourselves, we risk even greater consequences. I understand. But I also understand that we cannot afford to betray the people's trust. We need to come up with a solution that doesn't make us look like puppets. Perhaps we could offer limited reforms, a symbolic gesture, something to calm the unrest without fundamentally changing our commitments to international allies. We could promise an increased focus on local priorities. I think we need to do that. I will address the nation tomorrow, publicly reassure them that we are listening. But we also need to stress the importance of global cooperation for the future. We need to focus on supporting local businesses and ensure more transparency in the government's dealings, but still maintain our trade agreements and foreign aid.
The next step is clear. President Bayo will speak to the nation, promising reforms to pacify the people. But even as the government makes its move, the anger and determination of the protesters grow louder, fueled by the voices of activists like Seyi and Tolu. The government may try to control the narrative, but the public's demand for true sovereignty cannot be easily subdued.
The government thinks they can calm this down with a few words.
But we've got the people now. We need to keep the pressure on. We need to make sure we counter every point they make. The government will try to play it as if they're reforming when all they're doing is appeasing us with promises.
The media is already starting to shape the narrative.
We've got the momentum now. The streets and the internet are one and the same. They can't control both. We've seen it all before. Foreign nations trying to control our economy, our politics, and now our voice. But the people of Nigeria are awake. The government cannot afford to ignore us. We will fight for our future.
Not just through protests in the streets, but by making sure our voices are heard around the world.
As Seyi and Tolu lead the digital charge, their influence grows exponentially. The government's efforts to control the narrative are met with increasing resistance from the people, who now have a platform to push back. The battle for Nigeria's future is not just on the streets, but online, where the fight for sovereignty becomes a battle for the soul of the nation.
My fellow Nigerians, today I address you not as your president, but as a fellow citizen who shares in your hopes, your struggles, and your dreams for this great nation. In the past weeks, we have witnessed protests echoed across every corner of our land. These protests, driven by the voices of our people, have made it clear you want change and you want to be heard. But let us be clear, Nigeria's future cannot be built in isolation. We must remain committed to the global system, to partnerships that will ensure our growth and security. Yet, I also hear your cries, and I know that we must balance our international, there were more obligations with your demands for more local empowerment and transparency. Therefore, I am pledging today to work with the people of Nigeria to make our future prosperous. We will begin reforms to improve transparency, encourage local businesses, and create jobs. Create a framework for economic independence that does not forsake our international partnerships. But make no mistake, we will not be swayed from our commitments to the global community.
The president's speech, designed to quell the protests and calm international allies, lands with mixed reactions. To the government's allies, it signals stability. To the protesters, it's a half-hearted attempt to placate them. The struggle for Nigeria's soul, however, is far from over. The real question remains: will this speech be enough to silence the voices of a nation that demands real change?